My job title is the Clean Energy Program Director with Environment California, and we're a statewide nonprofit advocacy organization. We're formed out of the state PIRGs, the Public Interest Research Group, so we have affiliated organizations around the country, and our vision is to make California a clean energy leader and keep us as the vanguard in promoting clean energy solutions, not only for the sake of getting California cleaner air and protecting our environment and our economy here, but then also in terms of playing that role of being the leader in the country and in the world, frankly, given the size of our market and our economy and our ability to lead the way. So when we came out of the California energy crisis was a sort of a unique opportunity to capture public support for alternatives to fossil fuels. And so right in the heart of the energy crisis, when the fossil fuel industry was clamoring for the ability to build more fossil fuel power plants, we came in with an agenda to do the opposite, of build more wind farms, build more solar, build more geothermal plants, more renewable energy. We successfully passed in 2001 a renewable electricity standard of getting California to 20% renewables by 2017. That was the goal, and that was the bill that was passed that year.
You did that?
We did it along. I mean, it was a coalition effort, but that was the initial sort of capturing sort of a big idea in the midst of a crisis, and reframing. Frankly, we were successful enough to reframe the conversation to being, we don't need more fossil fuel power plants. What we need is diversified energy, energy that Enron can't control. And so that was the first step. When we then passed that bill, we took a step back and realized that the one energy technology that's not really going to be supported by a large-scale renewable electricity mandate, because so the mandate forces the utilities to build giant power plants like a wind farm. But the technology that wasn't going to be supported was distributed generation, so distributed solar power on rooftops throughout the state, which is honestly, we need them all of those technologies, but distributed power is the far superior way of doing things just because it's inherently more efficient. It uses sort of a brownfield, if you will, of a roof. It doesn't have to gobble up any kind of open space. You don't have to build transmission lines and distribution lines, which are expensive and also can be environmentally damaging. So there's a whole number of reasons why distributed generation makes sense, and of course solar, which even to this day in California we don't even get 0.5% of our electricity from solar. So we looked at that and we said we've got to do something big. And all the previous sort of policies were great; they kept inching us forward, but they sort of were taking the incremental approach, and we decided now was the time to put out a very big vision. And so we teamed up with Senator Murray, former state senator Kevin Murray from Los Angeles, and our first bill in 2003 was to not just create it was the vision of creating a mainstream market for solar. So no longer should it be for just the backwoods hippies or the Malibu millionaires. It should be for Main Street, everyday California. And so we first put that out there in 2003. It ran aground from opposition from the utilities and the building industry, but then we got Governor Schwarzenegger to make it part of his platform. It was actually candidate Schwarzenegger made it part of his platform, and said, I want to do this. I want to make solar power mainstream. I want to build every new home with solar panels. We're going to do this, and we're going to do it big. And so that was sort of the beginning of this very historic, monumental campaign that's we're still working on today, not only in terms of really truly getting solar roofs out there and getting solar power out in California, but now expanding the reach of the vision of this and including solar water heaters, which are, as I sort of think of it, they're they're sort of the power horse, the workhorse of the solar market. PV is photovoltaic solar electric panels produce this high quality product, or this this product that's in high demand, electricity. Solar water heaters just do the base work that we need solar power to do as well, and the two complement each other so well. And so we're hopeful that California will again this year make history and lead the charge on bringing about not just a renewable market for wind and geothermal, not just solar electric technologies, but solar hot water as well with this new bill. That was a very long answer. My God. Okay. I'll try and get a little more soundbitey for you.
No, that was wonderful.
You can edit.
That's right. So were you able to get the other votes after the hearing?
Yeah, so today, we introduced AB 1470, which is the Solar Water Heating and Efficiency Act of 2007, authored by Marin County's Jared Huffman. We were able to get that bill through the State Assembly over the past couple of months. The vote that was held today in the Senate Energy Committee was a tough vote. We had opposition from the state's largest gas supplier, Sempra, in the Assembly, and that didn't help, but we were able to convince enough legislators that this was the right thing to do. But in this committee, it really got stuck there for a while, and we were super concerned that it wasn't going to pass. And again, the gas companies, I think most people realize the transparency to their opposition to this bill. The natural gas savings potential of the solar water heating market is tremendous. PG&E's own study shows that if we were to tap into the market potential for this one technology in California, we could cut gas demand statewide by 5%. Now 5% may seem like a small number, but if you're Sempra, it's not, because it's actually at least half the capacity of one of their proposed LNG terminals that they want to build. So that's basically taking away the market that they're hoping that they're investing tremendous amount of capital, political and monetary, physical capital, in assuming California is going to stay dangerously dependent on fossil fuels and on natural gas specifically. So if we can jumpstart this market and cut out that demand, that has a significant impact on the economics of natural gas, and all in the positive direction for the consumer and for the environment, in the negative direction for the companies that have chosen the wrong path, which is chosen to stay on the fossil fuel path. So it's not surprising why they're opposed, but conversely, it also isn't then surprising that we were able to get a majority of the senators today in the Energy Committee to vote yes. And in fact, we got 6 of the 8 voting members today to vote in favor of it. And we're actually still hoping that the 2 Republicans will join us on the Senate floor, because we see that these policies, both the Million Solar Roofs bill last year and this bill, they are bipartisan policies. They're things that Californians across the state, across political lines, across economic lines embrace and really want to see California put forward these solutions. It was an exciting vote today, and so in the face of opposition from the state's largest gas company, we made it happen.
And say more about how you made it happen. Is this just a process of lobbying, or did you involve the public?
We, in almost any bill or campaign that Environment California embraces, it's generally rule of thumb is we put out a big enough vision that it almost always requires grassroots organizing. This bill in particular is a great case example in that, again, you have a technology everybody loves, a policy that can be supported in a bipartisan manner. Really, opposition is narrowed down to the natural gas company, a classic special interest, powerful special interest. And on the merits of the policy alone, there aren't really any arguments against the bill itself, and it comes down to just a political decision of, do you vote in favor of what's good for the public at large, or do you vote in favor of what's good for this natural gas utility? What we ended up doing for this bill, and what it absolutely required, I'm sure we wouldn't have gotten this bill out today, was an all hands on deck effort across the state, to generate phone calls into the key senators' offices, just demonstrating support for this bill. Within an afternoon, for example, when we found out that the senator from San Diego had serious concerns about the bill, we generated 103 phone calls just by going out and talking to San Diegans on the street, saying, here's this basic idea of solar power, would you call your senator? And people were, of course, they whip out their own cell phone and make the call right then and there. So a tremendous amount, and we did that across the state to all of the senators in the committee, all 9 senators on that committee, just again demonstrate to them that there's true constituent support for solar power. In addition to that, we then generated support from businesses that stand to benefit from a growth in demand for solar water heaters. So solar installers, manufacturers, even other businesses that see a benefit to reducing natural gas demand. So surprisingly to some, what PG&E actually came on and supported this bill, and even testified in favor of it. And again, it comes down to for them, as demand for natural gas increases, prices increase. And because they're not the supplier of gas, they have to buy it, in fact, from Sempra. It's in their best interest to see a reduction in demand from gas by people becoming more efficient in their homes. And then also, from a global warming perspective, this technology is going to be the most cost-effective ways for California to meet its global warming goals. So we've got lots of businesses, lots of constituents. And then, in addition to that, we were able to organize opinion leaders around the state. So we were able to generate an editorial from the Los Angeles Times, from the Sacramento Bee, from the Fresno Bee. We put in an opinion editorial in the San Diego Union Tribune. We got Lieutenant Governor John Garamendi to send a personal letter in. The president of the LA City Council, Eric Garcetti, sent in a personal letter. So we just generated all different levels of support to, again, demonstrate that this is a good bill and it's worthwhile for the senators to vote against this otherwise powerful company.
So talk about the wider context. It isn't just kind of state pride that you're trying to fulfill here, right? You're trying to lay down a model that other people can follow.
California has for 30 years now been a leader in promoting energy efficiency and renewable energy. And what we've seen in the past is that when California acts, other states and eventually the federal government follow. And in today's day and age, even other countries sit up and take notice and follow. We've seen that with mandate for fuel-efficient cars. That was initially established in California as a California state law. CAFE standards first established here, eventually adopted by other states and by the federal government. Again, we see this time and again. And so what our vision is not only pushing this through for California's sake, but pushing these types of visionary, bold, solution-oriented policies so that California's market gets in gear and focuses on renewables, but it makes that easier. That very function makes it easier for other states then to do the same. So with last year's Million Solar Roofs initiative, for example, we have gotten a number of state legislatures around the country who are basically introducing and wanting to model their solar programs off of California's. And we're hopeful with solar water heating also that California can jump in and show that this works and lead the way that other states will follow.
Now, there are other states and countries who are doing very well. Can you talk about that?
That's actually a good point. In this, this one particular situation, there are 2 other states specifically that are doing a good job and that we're actually taking a look at here in California. Those 2 are Hawaii and Florida, 2 equally sunny states that have already put in place rebate programs and incentives for promoting solar water heaters. So when we drafted AB 1470, we spoke with the folks that are running those programs in those 2 states and found out what was working and what wasn't, and basically modeled a lot of what we're proposing for California on the experiences in Hawaii and Florida. And then, of course, Europe and Asia are going gangbusters with this technology. I mean, there's the latest estimates I've seen are It's over 80 gigawatts of 80 gigawatts worth of thermal energy is installed around the world, with a 15% growth in 2005 alone for that market over 2004. So it's, and I believe China is home to 80% of that market. So they've actually been bitten by the bug of solar water heating, that it makes so much sense. It's so efficient. It is such a powerhouse in terms of reducing your dependence on imported fossil fuels, and it reduces global warming pollution, that these other countries have already actually been aggressively investing in these technologies and installing them. The United States, in comparison, has just a little over 1 gigawatt of solar water heating compared to 80 worldwide. So we're behind. And this is a trend we've seen. Back in the 70s, California and the United States were the leaders in these technologies. Government support went away abruptly and suddenly, and those companies basically moved and went over to Europe and Asia, where a growing concern about global warming and fossil fuel addiction has been spurring positive policy since the 90s. We're now finally coming back into realizing that we had a good thing going in the 70s, and that we should get back up to speed. And again, California being the 6th largest economy in the world, once we set our minds to doing something, we can do it big, and we can make a big, huge impact. So we're hoping to catch up with Austria and Japan and Germany and Hawaii and Florida real quick, and again, set the pace for all the rest of the 47 states to follow.
So you don't have to have sunny California or sunny Florida in order to make this technology work?
The interesting thing that we have been educating a lot of legislators on, that always makes people's jaws drop, is Austria installs about 40 times the amount of solar hot water heaters as California, and they have the climate of Minnesota. So solar power works wherever the sun shines. As long as as long as there's not a tree blocking the system and shading the system, it's going to work. It'll work in Maine, it'll work in Alaska, it'll work in everywhere basically in the United States. Another interesting fact is, again, Germany, both solar photovoltaics and solar hot water, are outpacing the installation of solar even here in California, and they have the amount of sunshine of, I believe, Alaska. I mean, it's what other countries are able to do, improve what's possible with solar power. It just demonstrates that all over the United States, solar power is viable.
So, explain in more detail, if you wouldn't mind, what exactly this bill will do. I'm a homeowner. I've got a conventional gas water heater. How is this going to affect me?
Okay. AB 1470 will create a 10-year long program committing $250 million to providing consumers incentives, an upfront rebate toward the purchase of a solar water heater. So that's, again, new homeowners, existing homeowners, businesses, farmers, anybody that wants to make this investment. The state is saying we will give you a upfront rebate that should shave roughly about a third of the cost of the system, combined with what we hope will be an extended federal tax credit for solar water heating. The AB 1470, if approved and signed into law, should buy down about half the cost of a solar hot water heater for a home and business. So for a homeowner, what that means is the typical cost of a solar water heater ranges between $4,000 and $6,000. It's a typical cost. That's pre-rebate. Post-rebate, post AB 1470, with your state rebate and with your federal tax credit, we should knock the cost down to between $2,000 and $3,000. When you pay for that upfront and you just write a check for $3,000, $2,000, $3,000, for most homeowners, based on how much your gas bill will be reduced, which is roughly, it should be cut in half roughly. It'll take about 8 to 10 years for just a simple payback. These systems, however, are guaranteed to last for at least 20. And for most people, once you sit down and do the calculations, you realize that this is one of the few things you can invest in where the value of it increases the minute you put it in. And every single year the value increases. And the reason is because your natural gas that you otherwise would be purchasing to do something as simple as boiling water, that is going up in price. And there's nowhere but up that natural gas and all other electricity and fossil fuel-based energy resources are going but up. And so the sunshine it's free. And so here you have a technology that you invest $3,000 in today that's actually increasing in value over the 20 years that it's going to last you. So for most people, that's a good deal. The other interesting thing, though, is when you finance the system, the $2,000 to $3,000, and you roll it into a low-interest home mortgage or a home equity or home improvement loan, you can actually see a payback right away. And the reason is because those interest payments you make on the loan are tax deductible as well. And so what we've seen is for most people, if you finance your system that way, you'll see it's not a huge windfall profit, but you'll see maybe $5 savings in month one, which over the course of a year adds up, to $100 or so, which again is not a huge windfall profit, but it's enough to where a lot of people feel can make that initial investment if it's going to pay for itself right away.
Now, would there be people who would not qualify for? Like I was just asking Jared, we have propane hot water.
So AB 1470, the $250 million fund set up over 10 years would come from a small surcharge on gas bills, on utility gas bills. Roughly 13 cents a month is what everybody who's hooked up to a gas utility would pay. So anybody that's hooked up to the utility then has access to the pot of money. This means that the only Californians that wouldn't have access to this pot of money would be those who are on propane or those who have an electric water heater. That said, if you have an electric water heater, which only about 5% of Californians have, it's mostly about 80 to 85% of the hot water heaters in California are natural gas. So this is going to cover the bulk of California. But those who have electric, they will be able to qualify for the rebate from the California Solar Initiative, which is what the Million Solar Roofs bill last year passed. So if you're displacing electricity, such as an electric hot water heater, you qualify for a rebate under that program.
Really?
And what SB1 did by focusing on electricity, it's an electricity surcharge, very similar to AB 1470, electricity surcharge providing a rebate for solar electric technologies, is it created a gap in policy by not then supporting gas displacing technologies like most solar water heaters. So AB 1470 is actually fills in the gap that SB1 created, so that California's solar roofs vision and our market is open to both technologies. So again, if you have propane, you wouldn't qualify for this rebate, unfortunately, although it might be that propane is expensive enough that the systems might pay for themselves without a rebate. I haven't actually looked into that. If you have electric water heaters, you could qualify for a rebate under the Million Solar Roofs Initiative. Some legislators have expressed concern that $250 million is too much money, and that 13 cents a month for the average residential ratepayer in California is too much of a burden. What we say to that is a couple of things. One is this AB 1470 would require that the Public Utilities Commission prove that this is actually a cost-effective investment for the ratepayer. What that means is the PUC will have to do their own analysis and show that by spending 13 cents today, we as ratepayers are saving 26 cents tomorrow. We've shown that with solar photovoltaics, with the Million Solar Roofs bill, which committed $3 billion to solar electric technologies, that by not having to purchase electricity from the Enrons of the world, we as ratepayers are saving $10 billion over the 20-year life of these solar systems that we're going to be installing over the next 10 years. So threefold savings. With solar water heaters, we expect the same kind of return. And it's very simple. We as ratepayers, those of us who truly are the consumers, we're investing a small fraction. We're putting in a 30% of the cost It's being matched twofold by the homeowner or the business in a technology that is essentially negating the need for all of us to pool our resources together and purchase natural gas. So it's actually a public-private investment that you never really get when it comes to a pipeline or a power plant where it's subsidized 100% by ratepayers. This is a situation where we as ratepayers say, we're going to give you a little bit of money to help shave off some of the cost of these systems. You as the homeowner are going to invest the bulk of the costs, and we as ratepayers, as a group of people, are going to get free fuel basically out of the deal, and that fuel is the sun. So it actually, when you actually step outside of the there's a lot of preconceived ideas that we're just helping solar technology because everybody likes solar, it's a feel-good technology. And there's a very understandable preconceived idea, misconception of what this is really about. And actually, when you sit down and understand the economics of it, you realize if you care about ratepayers, this is the wisest thing we can be doing with ratepayer dollars, is investing in this. And again, just to make sure that that's the case, we're mandating that the PUC's program can't go forward unless they can prove that it's cost effective for ratepayers. So it's 13 pennies today, 26 at least pennies saved tomorrow, which for most legislators, that's enough to feel comfortable. And then obviously none of that accounts for the environmental costs that we're saving. And we don't even start, this is just pure, the normal contained costs in supplying fuel to California. The environmental benefits from both what we're not having to spend money on, emergency room visits, from asthma, asthmatic children, all of the global warming impacts and mitigation and measures we're going to have to take, potentially more draconian than this if we don't get with the reductions sooner than later. Those are real cost savings for not just ratepayers but for California at large. And then of course there's the economic benefits from spurring a homegrown industry. California's already home to two of the largest manufacturers of solar water heaters. There's a company called FAFCO up in Chico and a company called Sun Earth down in Fontana in Southern California. Those companies, interestingly enough, manufacture solar water heaters primarily for the Hawaii and Florida markets because we have such a small market here in California. So they're here, they've been here for 30 years. They used to service the California market. When we stopped paying attention to solar water heaters, other states did, so they kept manufacturing them for those states and even Europe. So here we have two homegrown local companies that are going to be able to ramp up manufacturing capacity right here in the state. Those are real jobs. That's real dollars flowing in to California's business and small business and jobs. And then we're going to have all of the installers that are going to be able to hire more people, train more people, and go out and actually make the, do the installations on the roofs. One of the reasons why, in fact, today's hearing saw the support of the California Labor Federation and the Pipe Trades Union, because they see this as every dollar we're investing in solar water heaters, we're investing in real jobs right here in California.
Can't be outsourced.
Nope. We're not, California right now, for every dollar we spend on natural gas, 80% of it goes out of the state. And that's not going to, lucrative long-term jobs. They're it's a pipeline that's just bringing gas into the state from elsewhere. And our studies have shown, in fact, that all renewable energy technologies, solar water heaters at the high end, generate more jobs per megawatt, per unit of energy than a fossil fuel power plant. The range is 4 to 11 times. So solar rooftop technologies create roughly 11 times more jobs per unit of energy. So it's a win-win for everybody but the fossil fuel industry, which brings us back again to the opposition by the industry to our bill and how they came close to tanking it, but thanks to the activism of hundreds of Californians and the support of opinion leaders who are realizing the need for California to make the switch to solar power and become the Saudi Arabia of the sun.
Is there any chance that the cost of by the ramping up might lower the cost?
One of the ideas behind AB 1470 is that we address the chicken and egg problem that has plagued the solar industry, the solar power market for decades now. And that problem is simply that the demand is small, and therefore the prices stay high. And the prices stay high, and so therefore the demand stays low. This is a classic situation where you have a technology and a market that will bring enormous benefits, social benefits to the whole state, and therefore the government, it's a great role for government to play to step in and change those dynamics around. So the idea, the policy vision behind AB 1470 is not only to build more solar power and to reap the environmental benefits from it, but it's actually to create a mainstream market, a self-sufficient market for solar water heaters by committing 10 years worth of funding. We're not going to pull the plug in 2 years after the industry gets going. We're saying we're going to give you for sure 10 years of funding, and it's going to be a significant amount of funding in a significant market. And in so doing, you can now go and invest in increased manufacturing capacity, increased employment and training. You can make the investments, maybe even research and development, to create even more efficient, cheaper to manufacture, cheaper to install systems, and make those investments, and you'll know that you'll get a return on your investment. So that's what we're selling to the industry. And then what we're putting in the bill to make sure that the vision is realized is we're requiring that the rebates slowly decline over time. And it's gradual over the 10-year period, and that they then sunset. And we're saying, this is it, we'll give you 10 years, but we want to see price reductions as a result of this investment in this technology. And we've been working with the solar industry on whether or not these reductions can happen, and they're confident that they can achieve economies of scale as a result of building almost 250,000 solar roofs over the next 10 years. And that's again, at the end of the day, we want to see solar power become, as commonplace as double-paned windows and insulation. It should be on almost every single roof in California, both solar hot water and solar photovoltaics. It's a no-brainer for this state to have that type, to invest this heavily in that technology. And, at the end of the day, even though fossil fuels and nuclear power are heavily subsidized, still have been for 100 years almost, and are still heavily subsidized, and renewable energy always still has to play on an uneven playing field, we still have so much confidence in that this is such a cheaper way of doing things and a better way of doing things, that we can get rid of direct subsidies by simply putting our market focused in on this technology, and put the California's market force to bear on it, and that will actually reduce prices and get it become self-sufficient in 10 years.
This is not a new technology necessarily. It may have refinements, but it's been around for a very long time, and there have been some times when it kind of surged and then was driven back. Can you talk about that?
Sure.
That cycle?
Really, actually, the history of solar water heating, especially in California, is really interesting. It is, of course, the first patent for solar water heater in California was, I believe, in 1891. And shortly after that, almost every single home in Pasadena was built with a solar water heater. It was common technology. What happened was then natural gas, shortly thereafter in the 1920s, natural gas was discovered in the LA basin. And we started switching over to then very cheap natural gas, because of course it was local and it was abundant, and we had no idea the environmental ramifications of switching over to this fossil fuel. So we suddenly displaced previously more expensive wood and other forms of home heating and home fuels with this cheap natural gas, and the solar water heating market fell. The bottom fell out from under it because there was no longer demand for the technology. We then fast forward another 50 years to 1970s, where we have, of course, the energy crisis of the 70s, where both oil and natural gas, being inextricably linked fuels, were being controlled and withheld from the United States by the oil embargo of the 70s. And so we saw now that President Carter and former Governor Jerry Brown put in place very generous incentives for solar water heaters. California was particularly supportive of the technology, and so we saw again a huge boom in the number of installations. The industry, resurfaced and started to blossom and grow. And then, of course, a few years after that, all of the government support was taken away when Reagan and Duke Majan were elected. And so suddenly California's market for solar water heating, again, the bottom dropped out from underneath it. And the industry had to again sort of hole up and sort of downscale, and has been basically kind of incubating up in, frankly, the Northern California, sort of surviving off of the subsistence, off the grid movement that sort of came out of the 70s. And then, of course, in the 80s and early 90s, Europe and Asia started to realize that they needed to cut their addiction and their dependence on fossil fuels. And so again, the solar industry was able to sort of stay alive based on these other countries. And so now here we come, almost over 100 years later, basically the same technology, lots of improvements, but basically the same concepts. And we're finally realizing that what we knew back in the 1800s was what we need to do today. And that the good news is there have been that what we're doing with AB 1470 on the quality issue and on the making sure that the technology modernizes, is that we're putting in place very strict standards for both the equipment itself and also the installers themselves, so that we can make sure that the market we're growing in California is a quality market, and that we get the best systems up on people's roofs that possible, and then we sort of push the industry toward ever improving this product.
Great. I wanted to also ask you to talk about the environmental problems with liquefied natural gas. Can you kind of make the contrast for us?
One of the things that, one of the cases we made for AB 1470 to the Senate committee today was that the choice of whether or not to promote solar water heaters isn't a question of whether we should do this over efficiency. It's not a question of whether we should do solar water heaters over wind. All of those things go hand in glove together. Efficiency and solar water heaters especially go hand in glove together. The more efficient your home is, the smaller a system, or the quicker it pays for itself. So those two things go hand in glove. The question is whether we support, or whether the direction we want to go in is solar water heating or solar power or liquefied natural gas, which is, of course, what the fossil fuel industry would like California to go in. From an environmental and public health point of view, this is very disturbing because, of course, beyond just the global warming impacts and the air pollution impacts of burning natural gas, the liquefied natural gas terminals are just very simply put, very dangerous facilities. They're being proposed near population centers in Southern California. They're being proposed in ecologically sensitive areas off of our coast. They are a threat to security from both a terrorist point of view and also a human error point of view. In fact, yesterday the Navy, while not taking an official position, there's another bill that sort of made it through the legislature yesterday that would basically give California a process for approving these liquefied natural gas terminals, because otherwise the authority rests only with the federal government. And the Navy actually testified, not taking a position one way or the other, but expressing their concern about the safety of the coastline as a result of these terminals being placed there. Yeah, so if I can give you hints on how to get a copy of that testimony, but it was really powerful. Not hints, but I can tell you how to get a copy of it.
Excellent.
So the liquefied natural gas terminals are dangerous facilities. They are going to further deepen California's dependence on natural gas as a fossil fuel. And the other issue that rarely gets discussed and brought up about natural gas is it's a very ecologically damaging process to extract it. I mean, we are doing a lot of damage right now in California to the Rockies, to Wyoming, to Colorado, because a lot of our natural gas is coming from the Rocky Mountains. We're doing damage to Canada, and now we're starting with these LNG terminals. We're talking about importing from foreign countries, importing from Russia, importing from Australia, importing from Indonesia, and those countries, I'm sure, do not have environmental safeguards in place to protect the environments of those countries and the people of those countries. So, from the wellhead all the way down to the water heater, solar, natural gas is environmentally very damaging and threatening to public health and security. Not to mention the economic, challenges of the economic impacts of our addiction to fossil fuels. So there's numerous reasons, environmental and economic, for getting California off of its addiction to natural gas. And again, solar water heaters are a very powerful solution to that, a cost-effective solution, and a no-brainer for the state and the rest of the country.
Great. And one more quick question about transmission costs in terms of both, in the case of gas pipelines, methane, leakage, and then also the transmission of electricity, the loss. Can you
Sure. One of the sort of the beautiful things about solar roofs, whether it's a solar water heater or a solar photovoltaic system, is that you generate the power that home or business needs right there. You generate it right there where the power is needed. And by doing so, you negate the need, or at least significantly lessen the need, to build all of the tremendous infrastructure needed to supply and transport energy across great distances, whether that's natural gas from a pipeline far away or it's electrons from a power plant in the middle of the desert. Those centralized energy sort of facilities require transmission lines, they require distribution lines to get it into the actual home, they require pipelines for transporting of the fluid, of the fossil fuels. All of that infrastructure is incredibly expensive. Billions of dollars of ratepayer dollars are sunk into that infrastructure. And of course, there's the environmental impacts of it as well. Roads have to be built along those transmission lines and pipelines. Pipelines are known to leak. Giant explosions can happen along the pipeline, and again, the transmission lines. There's concerns about electromagnetic fields. There's just concerns about, again, carving these transmission lines through. Right now, there's a line that's proposed through Anza-Borrega State Park. It would open up and build a road through a state park. So there's a number of environmental environmental impacts from this infrastructure, and then on top of that, you actually lose energy as you transport this energy across great distances. So when it comes to electrons, you actually lose at least 11% of the energy generated by the power plant just in the simple function of transmitting it through transmission and distribution lines to get it to the home. So if you then consider a solar power system is right off the bat 11% more efficient than relying on fossil fuel, a centralized fossil fuel grid. Not to mention the fact that it's more, reliable, it's steady, and nobody's going to climb up on your roof and turn off the sun. So Enron can't mess with our fuel supplies and our energy supplies if we're got a solar panel on our own roof.
We've got a lot of confusion going on now about the nuclear answer to our problems.
Yeah.
And I know you are really qualified to talk about that. So could you please?
Yeah, sure. You know, the nuclear industry has been limping along for decades. We haven't built a new nuclear power plant in over 30 years, of course. But they're still waiting in the wings, hoping to jump. They're very opportunistic, hoping to jump at the next opportunity. And unfortunately, they have found a potential opportunity in global warming and have convinced a very few, have convinced a few that this might be actually, nuclear power might be a solution to global warming because it is a carbon-free energy resource, or a near carbon-free energy resource. You know, this is like Dan Beckett of the Sierra Club, to give credit where credit's due, has the great expression of saying this is like, you know, somebody who's addicted to cocaine trying to kick the habit by switching over to crack. I mean, it does not solve our problems of public safety, of energy reliability, of, you know, lowering the price of energy. Nuclear power is dangerous. There's nothing good to do. There's no good solution to what to do with the long-term disposal of the high-level radioactive waste, and it's the most expensive way to boil water and generate an electron. So we are, one of the reasons why we keep pushing on renewable energy solutions here in California and across the country is because we are confident that when the American public is given the real choices, that it's not a choice between coal and nuclear power, but rather it's a choice between the old way of doing things, dirty and dangerous and expensive energy resources, nuclear included, versus efficiency and renewables and solar. The public, hands down, is going to choose the clean path. So our goal is to frame that real choice and then to put in place, you know, real policies and real programs to get those renewables out on people's roofs, in the ground, so that the choice doesn't even have to be made. We're making them through these policies. And that's the idea of AB 1470 when it comes to, you know, reducing our use of natural gas, and it's all of the other energy policies that we're putting out there and pushing through today.